What comes to your mind when you think about Africa before colonialism? Is it huts, endless forests, or people living in tribes without much order? That image is not just incomplete, it's false. Africa was a continent of kingdoms, empires, and city-states, full of advanced trade, brilliant art, and powerful cultures that rivaled anything in Europe or Asia. Roads, armies, palaces, markets, schools, and sacred traditions all flourished here long before Europeans ever arrived. Today, let's take a journey into that Africa, the real Africa, where the Yoruba ruled with sophistication, where the Ashanti's golden throne inspired legends, where the Benin Empire created artworks so fine they shocked Europe, where the Zulu warriors moved like waves of fire, and where the Swahili coast connected the continent to the rest of the world. In Nigeria, the Yoruba people built some of the most urbanized societies in Africa. Cities like Ife and Oyo weren't just settlements, they were organized states with kings called obas, councils of chiefs, and bustling marketplaces. Ife especially was seen as the spiritual heart, believed to be the place where the gods first created humanity. What's fascinating is how Ife's artists created sculptures so lifelike that when Europeans first saw them, they thought they must have been made by Greeks. But they weren't. They were made by Yoruba craftsmen, centuries before. That alone tells you how advanced their art and culture were. And then came the Oyo Empire, a Yoruba powerhouse that dominated West Africa through its cavalry, horsemen who could strike swiftly across the savannah. Imagine the speed of Mongolian warriors but on African soil. Oyo was also a center of trade, linking the interior of Africa to the coast, where goods like kola nuts, leather, and fabrics were exchanged. Now, let's cross over to Ghana and talk about the Ashanti Empire. If you want to understand the Ashanti, think of gold. Gold was their lifeblood, their symbol, their power. They believed their kingdom was spiritually tied to the golden stool, a sacred throne that embodied the soul of the entire nation. No king ever sat on it, it was too holy for that. It wasn't just a chair, it was the symbol of their existence. The Ashanti also built one of the most efficient governments in Africa. They had a confederacy system where different chiefs ruled locally but were united under the Asantehene, the king. They were skilled diplomats and fierce warriors, resisting colonial advances for a long time. When the British came for their land and their golden stool, the Ashanti fought back with legendary courage. Now let's head back to Nigeria to explore the Benin Empire. Benin City, the capital, was once described by Portuguese explorers in the 15th century as one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Its streets were wide and straight, lined with houses, and at the center stood the royal palace. But what really makes Benin famous is its art, the Benin bronzes. These weren't just decorations. They were records of history, politics, and spirituality cast in metal. When the British invaded in 1897, they looted thousands of these bronzes, and today many sit in museums in Europe. But those bronzes tell a story of sophistication, beauty, and a kingdom that was centuries ahead in organization. Now, let's travel far south to the Zulu kingdom in South Africa. The Zulus became famous because of their military genius, especially under King Shaka Zulu in the early 19th century. Shaka took small clans and forged them into a powerful nation. His warriors trained in unique battle tactics, fighting in close formation with short stabbing spears called ikulwa. Imagine rugby players, charging with perfect coordination, but this time with deadly precision. The Zulus' rise shook southern Africa, creating waves of migration and wars across the region. And even though they eventually clashed with the British and lost politically, their cultural legacy remains one of pride, resilience, and strength. But Africa's greatness wasn't just in single empires, it was also in the networks that connected them. Let's look at the Swahili city-states of East Africa. Stretching from Somalia down to Mozambique, cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, and Zanzibar flourished as trade hubs between Africa, Arabia, India, and even China. Their architecture blended African, Arab, and Persian styles, stone mosques, coral houses, and bustling ports. Imagine walking through Kilwa in the 14th century, you'd see merchants speaking multiple languages, spices and silks in the markets, gold and ivory being shipped overseas. This was globalization before globalization, and the Swahili coast was at its heart. And there's more. Africa's map was full of powerful states. In West Africa, there was Kanem-Bornu, ruling near Lake Chad for centuries, with strong cavalry and trade routes stretching deep into the Sahara. In modern Burkina Faso, the Mossi kingdoms resisted both Islam and European conquest, maintaining their independence for hundreds of years. In Dahomey, present-day Benin Republic, there were the Dahomey Amazons, elite women warriors who struck fear into their enemies. Imagine an army of disciplined women who fought with unmatched courage. In Central Africa, the Kingdom of Congo became a sophisticated Christian kingdom after contact with the Portuguese, complete with schools, churches, and written correspondence. Everywhere you look, Africa had powerful political systems, thriving trade routes, and deeply rooted cultures. Salt caravans crossing the Sahara. Ivory shipped from East Africa to Asia. Gold from West Africa enriching the entire world. So why don't we hear much about these kingdoms? Because history was often told by outsiders who ignored or erased Africa's achievements. But when you look closely, the evidence is undeniable. Africa was never a blank canvas. It was a continent full of life, innovation, and strength. The Yoruba, Ashanti, Benin, Zulu, Swahili, Kanem-Bornu, Congo, Dahomey, Mossi, these names are not just distant echoes. They are proof that Africa has always been home to advanced civilizations, powerful leaders, and rich cultures that shaped the world. So the next time someone asks, what was Africa before colonialism, you'll have the answer. Africa was kingdoms and empires, trade and art, courage and pride. Africa was not waiting to be discovered. Africa was already shining.